Hey everyone, welcome back to the Day 91 podcast. I'm Nathaniel, your host and founder of Day 91 Workplace Solutions. We are going to, in this episode, dive right back into the mailbox and see what we have coming in. Today's one that I picked out was from a VP who is claiming that there is a culture clash going on in her office, and I am here to read it. Just give me a second. All right. So she emails, "Hi Nathaniel, I'm a VP at a fairly established company with 100 employees. Our culture has always leaned more formal and polished, plenty of structure, clear policies, and a generally professional, even-keeled environment. About 6 months ago, we completed an acquisition of a much smaller company and brought their entire staff over with us, roughly about 25 employees. The contrast has been significant. Their team is incredibly close, almost like family, but their dynamic looks completely different from ours. There's a lot of blunt language, frequent cursing, and a kind of aggressive back and forth ribbing that's been clear about how they operate, for the past few years. None of it comes from a bad place, and the performance numbers have honestly been impressive, but stands in sharp contrast to the environment we have spent years in this new building. Now that both teams are working under the same roof, the tension is becoming harder to ignore. A handful of my longer tenured employees have quietly mentioned feeling uncomfortable around the language and its intensity, and I am generally worried that this becomes a bigger issue if I do not address it. At the same time, I do not want to come in and strip away the dynamic that had made the smaller team so effective and tight knit in the first place. I am stuck between wanting consistency across the organization and not wanting to dismantle something that has been clearly working for them. I'd really appreciate your perspective on how to even begin to approach this." Very good question. And I like this one because there's actually a really simple way through it. Right now it probably feels like the choices in front of you is conform or don't conform. Like you either make this team fall in line or you let things keep the things the way they are. But I really don't think that's actually a choice you're facing. Personally, I think what really is happening is two different things have gotten tangled together. And once you pull them apart, this gets a lot easier. The first thing to separate, I would say, is culture and conduct. The closeness, the loyalty, the way that smaller teams rally around each other, that's kind of culture, and that's what generally makes them good at their jobs. And you don't want to strip culture away from people. This is a good thing going. Clearly, it's working. We acquired the company, and there's no reason to. You don't need to touch it. However, I will say the cursing, the ribbing, all that type of stuff, that's probably conduct. That not the hard conduct, that is conduct. And that's just the language they've always used with each other. It's not, producing the results. It just happens to travel alongside with it. So once you see those as two separate things, you can stop feeling like you have to choose between protecting the team and protecting the workplace, because you can do both. Just separate under different categories. Address the culture or address the conduct. In this case, we want to address the conduct. Right now the issue probably feels like a general vibe problem. The general vibe problems are usually the most impossible to address, because no one can really put their finger on, what is specifically wrong. Is it the cursing? Is it the close relationship? Are they being aggressive with each other? What is the specific thing that is causing this, problem? Once you know exactly what's creating the discomfort, you kind of have something to work with instead of just feeling like you're trying to chase something, The hardest part of this will be the conversation. The conversation is the hardest part. I hate tough conversations, yet I work in HR, but tough conversations are important. It's not necessarily a memo from HR. I would go over to the team and kind of have an honest conversation with them. Say something like, "Oh, your results, they speak for themselves." No one's asking you to change who you are, but there's a difference between how you talk to each other and how you show up in shared spaces with people, who maybe didn't grow up in this environment with you. It happens a lot. I will say, even from my experience, a personal story working in HR, I was working with a company that we acquired. I was part of the big company. The company was smaller. It was a smaller, group of people who were acting very similar. I would sit in on their team meetings just because, I was there to help them, with recruitment. I was there to help them with culture improvement because, it's a lot of change. Change is a big thing when it comes to, corporations. Company acquisitions happen all the time. And I was sitting on their meetings, and there's a woman who's just like screaming her head off at people, being like, "You need to submit your deliverables, by 10 a.m. on Friday, because then we have to go in and process it. And we're staying late on Friday. We want to go home. We want to go to the beach." And everyone was just laughing at her because that's the way they talk, and they treat it as a joke, but they still took it seriously, and they made sure that they revised their policies. So for me coming in, I'm thinking that there's all this drama and all this controversy going on, but it's really not that bad. They're just the way they talk to each other. And then the problem was when they were speaking, with me, the manager's just kind of sitting there literally in a t-shirt, and I'm in this an outfit like this, t-shirt, burping, so casual, feet up on the chair type of situation. I felt a little uncomfortable myself. And he was very much like being completely honest, being like, what kind of HR person are you? You can't find, people to find this job. Why can't you hire for me? And just kind of, shooting the SHIT, with me, as he would like to say. And that made me uncomfortable too. So I understood. And I went to, the team, the company that I was working with, because now we're all one big company. We can't be these two separate companies anymore. You can't be company A, company B. This is how company A does it. So you have to conform. What I did is we had everyone come together and come up with a 6-month plan, essentially a 6-month plan, to come up with how we are going to be better with one another, communicate with one another, and able to conform, and I think having these conversations less formal is important too. If you have gone many months already without having a conversation like this, it's not a disaster. It just means that the conversation is happening reactively instead of proactively. Things happening reactively is not preferred, but it's still okay. It's okay to be reactive to a scenario that you did not see that was going to happen beforehand. So don't have to worry about being proactive all the time. It's okay. And that's what I'm here to help with, is if something happens that you weren't being proactive with, I'm here to kind of assist with that, everything like that. So when you have this conversation, you want to have it informal. I would have it, if you are the leader in this, since she's the VP, have that informal conversation with maybe the VP or owner of the other company. Let them know that we want to work as one. We're not going to force you to obey our rules. However, I want to come up with a plan that will benefit both of us. So that means language policies we're no longer going to use that type of language. However, it is okay to show up in t-shirts or whatnot. Maybe like do something like that, so that way the people from that old company who are tight knit can still feel comfortable amongst the ones that are with it. And that's just the simple initial gut reaction that I would do. If you were to call me in, to help you with an organizational assessment, I would take a look at a lot of things. I would like to take a look at your policies. I'd take a look at your handbook. And then I actually have honest conversations with both companies. Even though we're one company now, I'd have conversation with both companies. I would first have a conversation with the smaller company, having some type of almost like a skip level meeting, but not really. So I would handpick, or maybe not handpick, but have the owner of that company pick maybe like 5 employees, managers to, employees, maybe not mailroom clerk, but, to employees to have these conversations with. And I would ask them, what they like about their current culture, what they would change about their culture. And then I would go to the new company, or the one that bought them out, and have a similar conversation with them. What are your feelings about things? What is the culture that you prefer? What do you like? What you don't like? I'd take those points and come together and come up with a conclusion that I think would work best. I would then sit down everybody in this meeting, and we would have a conversation about what would work, what doesn't, cross things off the list, add things to the list, and see if it works. Planning more socials is important too. Here's the thing, I like to do. My father always mentioned this, where it's like, when you're going over to Thanksgiving and they give you time, to the placemat settings, and you notice that the person hosting will sit your family together and their family together. But my dad was like, why don't we just mix everybody up? Because we don't get to talk to people that we don't know. So I would encourage you to have a Thanksgiving dinner. I'll call it a Thanksgiving dinner, a Worksgiving dinner, whatever. You could be around November. You could call it something else if it's in June or Christmas or whatnot, and sit the companies intermixed with each other. So have some people that are from company A and company B, A, B, 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 A, B, B, A, B, just sitting next to each other and collaborating with each other. You might meet new friends that way. Another thing that we did in a former company is I fixed this with a Halloween party. A Halloween costume contest, actually. So there would often be times where teams would do their own Halloween costumes and their own sections. So, for example, like the billing team would do their own thing, the clerical team would do their own thing, the administration team would do their own, whatever group costume of minions or something. And I said, these people, they said they want to be interacting with each other more. So I'm going to go ahead and reassign these costume groups. I would set, 2 people from billing with 2 people from, administrative, and maybe 1 person from a different department, all having a group costume. And once I sent that email out, immediately people were running to each other's offices that they've never really entered to and be like, oh my God, we have this great idea. We are all going to dress up as Robin Williams characters, or we're all gonna dress up as pilots. We're all gonna dress up as this, and it was really great to see the interaction, uh, and see the cross collaboration of people who would never speak to each other. You would never see a senior vice president, with the administrative assistant being part of a group and being so willing to do it, and it was just so great to see amazing collaboration. And that's a great way to kind of collaborate with each other. Remember to mix these teams together. Don't treat them as separate. You are one company now. Form that heart of love, as I like to say, as cheesy as it is. But that's it that I have. That's the best advice I can give you. I really hope that you're able to take some of this and, get some Thanksgiving dinners or Halloween parties together. If you have any questions or want to submit any things to the show, feel free to give me a follow on LinkedIn uh, at Nathaniel Sites, or head over to day91solutions.com. I have a whole bunch of information on more about my Day 91 approach, of how I like to handle workplace scenarios and how to give it the best resolution as possible. If you want to submit a question, feel free to do it on the intake form there. I will make sure to read it on here. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening to everyone. This is the Day 91 podcast. Remember, always choose the people.